I'm WANG ZIYI. I'm from 10th floor. I'm a PhD student from the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Faculty of Medicine. Maybe you don't know what is obstetrics and gynecology. It's a department to help treat the women diseases and help to deliver new babies. Yes. Today I will talk about the effect of Bisphenol A on reproduction and female reproduction protective measures. Maybe not the BPA or the phenol BPA. Yes. Firstly, I will introduce something about the human endocrine system. It is a system that produces the hormones that regulate the human bodies. It depends the different organs, and I will show you the upper one is the organ, thyroid, pancreas, ovaries, testes, and the lower one is the hormone that produced by this organ. And other OB, today I will talk about the ovaries. You know the ovaries. Ovaries is an organ that will produce both oocytes, we call it eggs, and also produce two kinds of hormones, estrogen and progesterone. It helps to regulate the every month's bleeding. You know bleeding? We call it menstruation of females. And what is endocrine disruptor chemicals? It's a kind of synthetic or natural chemicals that are produced, and when they are absorbed into human beings, it will block their hormone functions by mimicking or blocking hormones, as we can see from this. And this is nothing different kind of phenol, PCB, and pesticides, and different kinds. It appears in our environment, and it will disturb our reproduction. And what is BPA? Bisphenol A is a kind of endocrine disruptor chemicals, and it's very important, and it widely appears in our atmosphere, from dust to the air, to the water, to the food. And it produced about 3.6 million tons every month. And this is the chemical and the physical characteristics of BPA. And you will know, what is BPA? Can we touch it? Yes. BPA is a kind of industrial chemicals that it can be used to produce polycarbonate and epoxy resins and thermal papers. Do you know what is it? It's a kind of plastic, PC. And thermal papers is that we got when we pay for the bill. You got the thermal papers. And this is the BPA widely appeared in our environment. And firstly, about some containers, some water bottles, some cans, and this is the thermal paper. Maybe you will touch it every day. And how we can touch it? We expose to the Bisphenol A in different ways. There are three main pathways. It's about the first one involves from the food and drink water, and because the can and bottles and many things contain these chemicals. And the second one is about dust inhalation. We breathe, and the dust contain BPA. And the thermal contact, we touch the thermal papers. And how about the concentration? The concentration of Bisphenol A in our human beings is about 0.5 nanomole to 40 nanomole. And how about it exists? BPA will exist in human beings' body fluid for about 24 hours. But its recent study shows that it will last for longer than 24 hours. And what is the effect of BPA on our health? It has different respects. The first one, I will introduce the reproduction harm that will many people. I will introduce reproduction later, and there is we can call it in Chinese 糖尿病. and cancer, obesity, and heart disease, and immune system, thyroid function, and neurological disorders. And then I will introduce something about reproduction. And this is the anatomy of female reproduction system. You will clearly see that this is the uterus where the baby grows for the first few months. And this is the fallopian tube. You look at this, it's beautiful. And this is the ovary. It produces eggs and hormones. Yes, this is the anatomy. And do you know that the very beginning of the human being life, that is the embryo implantation? Yes, that when a woman produces embryo, oocyte, and this oocyte, we call it eggs, into the fallopian, and there it makes the sperms, and there's very strong, the strongest sperm will infertilize the egg, and then they form an embryo, and take about 5 to 6 days. This embryo will grow from the fallopian to the uterus, and then implantation. And this is uterus. It takes about 3 steps to implantation. The first step of hybridization. The next one is attachment, and the third one is invasion. It's similar to the migration. Yes, and this is the embryo under microscope. It's beautiful, yes. And how about the bisphenol A on the reproductive toxicology? And I think this is one of the most important part in the reproduction procedures. And what about the BPA on the reproduction? There's many studies. I only give some of them. The first one is impaired oocyte quality. That's this one. Yes. And as we know, implantation is a crosstalk between the mothers and the embryo. It's both need the hormone and the endometrium. This is endometrium of the mother, and this is the embryo. Yes. The next step is that the BPA can interfere with uterine endometrial proliferation. And the third one is it can reduce the endometrial receptivity. That means that the mother have not enough space for the embryo. And my research on bisphenol A is about the 2 sides. I said before. I just say before, it's a crosstalk between the mothers and the embryo. So both sides is very important. And in our reproduction department, that the embryo is very pure from human beings. So we form some models in vivo or vitro. In vivo is used that we use some animals, and in vivo that we use some cell lines to mimic this procedure. And the first one, I test the bisphenol A on the cell proliferation. That if the BPA will reduce the cell growth, and we see that the concentration is very interesting. That as we know, this kind of thing is one of the EDC, endocrine disruptor chemicals, that very little amount will disappear interfere the human body's function, and that there's a high concentration will reduce the proliferation, and there's a low concentration. It seems that it's good to cell to grow. It's upregulate the cell proliferation. You may ask, how about the concentration? I will introduce later. And the first model that I used 2 cell lines to mimic the embryo implantation. The first model is about the transwell. I used 2 chemical cell lines. The first cell line is from the trophoblast cell lines. It seems that I just told you that the implantation needs 3 steps. One of them is invasion. So this kind of cell is surrounding the embryo, and it's used to invention. It's a vivo cell. It's a trophoblast cell. It's similar to it's from the cancer cell line, but it seems that embryo implantation is similar to the cancer migration. So we use vivo cell, and then the lower one is from the women and from our patient. We separate their endometrial cell and then co-culture together, and this is ECM to mimic the membranes of the endometrium, and add BPA into it. We can see that different concentration of BPA has a different effect on their invasion, but clearly that is some effect. Yes. And how about the concentration? And this is the concentration that can be detected in human fluid, and this is the concentration maybe it's too high, maybe in the dustbin water maybe. And the next model, the first model is about the invasion. The next model is about the mothers, about the receptivity of the endometrium. So I use another model, and this model I use also from cell line JR cell, and I shape into spheroids. You can see that this is a similar size to the embryo, about 20 to 200 micrometers, and we can get the result that still the high concentration of BPA will downregulate the attachment of the JR spheroids. That's we can see from these two models that it seems that the BPA has some effect on the embryo implantation in our models. And you may ask where is BPA in our lifetime. So I will introduce some knowledge about BPA, yes. And do you know that the plastic divided into different cans of, and it is divided into 7 cans. And it seems that these four times it does not contain BPA, so it's safe. But it's not all safe. You can see that I can use it everywhere. No, never. And these 3 things have to contain BPA. And you may know what are they about. And I just can tell you that when you buy some bottles or something that you must see the logo of the water bottles or containers. And I see this is my bottle. It's about 5. 5 is PP. It's very safe. It's the only plastic that contains into the microwave or oven. That other plastic cannot be heated, because as we know that except BPA, there's still some other things that we should take into consideration. And it seems that the 3, 6, and 7, we must take into consideration that this plastic cannot be used directly to contain some water or food. And what else that recycling? I checked in the website that these 3 kinds of plastic, it seems that it cannot recyclable. What about this? And maybe the first one is about some water bottle and soda water, and for the plastic bottle, and cannot be reused. And second one is about the shower containers, and the third one. And the third one is PVC. It's a kind of plastic that have many kinds of toxins. And our country and many other departments think that before they inhibit this production. And the first one is about that some package of our takeout food. So our takeout food cannot directly put into the microwave or oven because it's not very safe. Because BPA will leach from the containers and depend on the pH and temperature. It seems that about the 80 to 100 degrees centigrade that the BPA will leach faster. about 18 times the normal. And the first one is the very safe one. Yes, it's the only plastic that can be heated, and it's called PP. And the second one, the last one is about everything, about PCR, other things. But you may get confused. But just remember that 3, 6, and 7, they are not very safe. Yes. And the next one I'll talk about that protect our reproductive capacity. And most of us want to have the next generation, want to have a healthy baby, so we must to protect our reproductive capacity. And the first one is that we all know about it, the health management. The second one is the reduce exposure to the toxin, contaminant, and EDC. And the third one is I want to say something about it is the contraception, 避孕. And it's divided into different kinds of ways. And the hormone oral contraception, such as some pills, and the condoms, 避孕套, 然后 and the vaginal pump, and the intrauterine device. STD, sex-transmitted diseases. And how about this pills? You may say that you didn't take any measures. You should take the emergency oral contraceptions. I must recommend that it must last than 3 days, 72 hours. Yes, I think protect you from the emergency and unexpected pregnancy is very important to protect our reproduction capability. And you may see, I think this is a documental film. It's very interesting. It's about the plastic China. And now our economic is transmitting. Yes, we want economic benefit or the environment. Thank you.
Is it fair to say that the effect of BPA is more on pregnant women than infants rather than?
I think that the concentration of BPA depends on where you live and what's your job and your other things. It's not about the female or male or
No, I mean given the same dose.
What?
Given the same dose.
Given the same dose, yeah.
Infant and pregnant women actually more affected than adults.
Because that's we in the clinical trial that the concentration of BPA in the pregnant woman is associated with abortion and some other unexpected outcomes. So we got this test. It's from the clinical trial.
No, my meaning is an infant, is a pregnant woman, is an adult.
Yeah.
So I either give them the same dose of BPA every day.
Yeah.
So the impact, in fact, it's actually on the infant and on the pregnant woman, but not so on the adult.
Okay.
That's
I see. Then in the former research that if exposure to the BPA for a long time and you stop exposure, it still has some aspect to the next generation in the former trial.
Are you able to quantify the adverse impact of BPA on our health? Like maybe how many % increase in some sort of cancer or reduce your chance of reproductivity?
It is seen that in the former research that in about 208, about 90% of the American women can be tested of the BPA. That In our clinical trial, we can only tell that it have the effect. It alleviates the risk, but we can't tell you how many percent.
As you mentioned before, that the PPA will inhibit the production of the hormones, right?
Yes.
Because it has the unique chemical structure of hormones. So, so the BPA effect on the reproduction system maybe is because it's lack of hormones, not the direct interaction with the cell.
Yes. We investigate it in different aspects, and the other people investigate that it will touch the estrogen and progesterone receptors. It will block it and then have some effect to the implantation. And it is already have some kinds of articles.
And how do you solve it? Like, obviously prevention is how you would reduce exposure, but once they've been exposed, what can you do?
There's many ways we can do it. First one, that we can choose our lifestyle, such as the water bottle. You can choose some steel and glass water bottle instead of plastic bottle. And you can wash your hand after attached to the thermal paper or something like that.